This is an in-depth look at the process sheets and how the math and connections work with the rest of the workbook for the bid sheet estimation template. So a lot of these items, this top area here, the charge artist names and the process sheet, all get their information from somewhere else. These come from the main page, and this one right here actually has a nice complicated formula which pulls the information directly from these sheet titles. So you can rename this and it'll automatically populate. It also is connected to the front page here, so you don't have to rename it in a bunch of different places. This is the only time where your input isn't flagged by blue, so it's worth mentioning. There are many different boxes here, and some of them are what is called data validation, so that you have this drop down list. So this is where you go to data validation, and the first thing you'll choose is list, and then the source is any range of cells that you choose, and all it's going to do is look at that range of cells and give those as your option for the drop down list. So it's not actually that complicated, and you can use any list in any sheet in any part of your workbook. So what I've done here is I've used it as any way to select the items that are in the price list that you're going to need to have exact names for in order for the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP program formulas to work really well. So in other words, I need this word to match exactly so that the computer can find the value in this column. So by using a list, it means you can only enter this exact word. So I use these on color, consistency, type of painting, painter, and materials. Materials are the most wishy-washy area here, and this is actually a whole slew of things, but they are in the price list under this general category of items, and this is just the amount of things that I have in the past been asked or had to account for in my various bids. So they made it on here, and this list grows every time I need to budget a new thing. It doesn't have that much rhyme or reason. So the units are all different and the price is per unit. So when we go back to the process sheet, what you're going to find is that this drop down depends on what unit you choose. So in this case, let's say canvas, the default unit is yard. Then let's say I need 4 yards. This will give me a cost estimation and it will help me figure that out. But the labor calculation for square footage doesn't really help me here. I can enter this last one manually, or I can add in some square footage until I get an hour rate that feels about appropriate for what I need the job for this canvas to do. But since this is such an oddball thing, I often just go ahead and change these numbers ad hoc. Up here is a lot more math involved. I'm going to go ahead and unhide my math columns. What you're going to see is down here on this lower part, we have one hidden bit of math, which is a VLOOKUP, which is telling the computer, hey, look at B22, look at that drop down list and go to the full price list that's on the price sheet and give me the value that is in the 4th column. That places it right here, and then I can do math with it once this number is here. So the math that it's doing is just simple multiplication of the amount times the base cost, and you get the estimated cost. This is essentially the same thing I'm doing up on the top of the worksheet, but each step is more complicated because there's more factors involved. So first of all, we're going to choose a color, and I went ahead and made an example color that's just a single color really. But what's happening here is that you also have a consistency. So you can change this consistency, and that is going to change this consistency, this percentage of pigment in the color over here. And what both of these are doing is, again, a VLOOKUP. So this one is saying, go look at the color price list and return the 2nd column. This one over here is saying, go look at the percent list and return the 3rd column. This one is go look at the percent list and return the 2nd column. So all 3 of these are using the information you entered here and here just to pull numbers back from your price list so that it can do math with them. The math that it's going to do is it's going to take this column here and multiply it by this column. It's going to say, all right, if that's how much it costs per gallon of full pigment, and there's only 75% of pigment in the color that we're mixing, then the price per gallon of that is going to be $28.31. And we're going to look it up again and say, well, at that consistency, it's going to cover 500 square feet as a gallon. Now you can enter your square footage. And what this will do is just basic division. So it's going to take how much square footage you have to cover and divide it by how many square feet it can cover. And that gives you an amount in gallons of how much paint you need. So this should be after it's diluted / when it's at the correct consistency, but don't forget that there's quite a bit that you're going to lose to preparation inside of your brushes and inside of your rollers. So it's good to round this up, which is also why there's a contingency on that page as well. It's good to keep in mind if you're using this worksheet to try and give you a ballpark of what you should be mixing and estimating, is that this really does need to pass a gut check, because those numbers are all different. It really matters what you put into them versus what comes out of them. And everyone's production rate is also different. So this next one of the estimated cost is just simply that amount times what it costs per gallon. And then you have labor estimations. Each of these are going to grab a certain amount. So again, we're just choosing the type of painting and the painter, and it's going to go and look at our production rate chart, and it's going to take these numbers and use them in the calculation. So if we go back to our process sheet, what it's doing is a standard VLOOKUP, but instead of putting in which column I would like the value returned from the rate table, I actually have an HLOOKUP that says, give me the column of whatever this information tells me. So what this complicated thing is saying is, hey, will you please go look up what's in L5, the type of painting, on the rate table, and tell me what it says in the column that has the word that's right here. So that brings back a number, and then I can grab total hours by just dividing this number, which is the amount of square footage you can paint in an hour, by the amount of square footage we need to paint. Bada bing, bada boom, you have the amount of time in hours. This document also has subtotals for the top section, subtotals from the bottom section, a calculated 10% contingency, and a grand total. You can take that contingency off. You can override it and make it a 0. You can also override the contingency up here to lower it so that you're not doubling that contingency. And that is how the process sheet works. That's the math behind the magic.